BEP Meet Events, bringing school leaders across Birmingham together to share and learn from and with each other.
Hello everybody, it's nice to be here. You're right, I was listening to Wendy speak, and so much of what I'm going to say, I hope you'll be able to see the resonances and similarities between what we do at Arc St Albans and what you do at Stringer. But I'm going to start off really briefly with a little context about the school. That will help you, because I'm going to talk about three key things that I think we do. That'll help you put those into context as well. So we're in Highgate in the city centre, just behind. So I either navigate to it by the Central Mosque or the McDonald's on the Bristol Road, but it's in the centre of the city there, and it's a very diverse, as you would expect, student population, with our largest groups being Yemeni, Somali, and Pakistani young people. So that's about 75% of our roll. Our pupil premium, skewed slightly by the opening of our sixth form, is at 60% on average, but in our sort of year 11 that just left, our current year 11 and 10, that's 80%. And we have roughly 76% of our students labelled EAL. So it is an ARC Academy, and it has been since 2009, but it's also a Church of England school, which is as important, if not more important, to the work that we do there. And it's been a Church of England school since its foundation 150 years ago. So the school initially was conceptualized 150 years ago as being at the heart of its community. And the school was built because the people, the Pollock brothers who founded it, had the faith that education can transform outcomes and life chances for the poorest people in the city. And that's still the work we do today. That hasn't changed in 150 years in that part of Birmingham. That may be an indictment, but it's still the same work, fundamentally. So I've worked there since 2008 as a deputy first, and then since September as the principal. It's very daunting to talk about it because performance is so high, and I've just taken over it, and I worry that I might be the David Moyes to my predecessors, Alec Ferguson. Obviously, I worry about that. And so the things I'll tell you about are partly my work, but they're the work of the team and particularly of my predecessor. One thing I'd say about it is that occasionally visitors to the school ask about is when you come in, we're very explicit about what we're there to do. We say we're there to take our students to university. That's what we say to our parents and to our students, and to succeed there, and to come out the other side and live happy and fulfilled lives, and fundamentally after that to give back to their community, whether that's the community of their family or the community around about. But we've got a big gap to close. In our year 11 cohort that's just left, of the 90 students, only 2 of them had level 5s on entry to us in maths and English, and the other 88 did not. So to say to them we're going to go to university, and to say to the many students who are coming to us with very limited literacy skills is a little audacious. And I would come back to echoing what Wendy said. So many of the students who come to us, maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago, people would have said, oh, well, EAL student, perhaps there's special needs there, perhaps we should dream a little less for this person. What we found is that when we expect that, our EAL students there's nothing wrong with them in terms of a special educational need. There's nothing wrong with them. They just don't know English. And as soon as they learn English, they can do as well as anybody else. So we have to close that gap. And the big lever we pull is literacy provision. And lots of what I'm about to say, you will recognize what Wendy has just said. I'm going to talk a little bit about the costs, because the only thing I've learned so far about being a principal is that whatever you choose to do, there's a cost somewhere else. And so the decisions we've made, they might not work for everybody else, but we feel they're working for us at the moment. I'll be clear with you, though, about the things that we haven't done because we've done this. So the first thing we say to all of our staff is that we are all teachers of literacy, all of us. It's not, it doesn't belong in a department, it belongs in the classroom. Because for our students and students like them, the greatest language resource in English they can access is the highly literate teacher that they meet every day in the classroom. So our parents often struggle with English themselves. And they certainly struggle with the kind of rigorous academic English that increasingly students have been asked to perform with, particularly with new Year 11 exams in GCSE. But in the school, we've got people who are literate, who are able to speak to students about how to get better at English, and it's everybody's responsibility to do that. So we train hard on a number of quite small interventions, really, about rehearsing orally before you write, speaking in full sentences, speaking audibly, rehearsing your writing on whiteboards, that kind of really quite simple stuff, but we make sure that everybody's doing it. Potentially, there's a cost there, isn't there, in terms of teacher autonomy. We're really insistent about that kind of stuff, and we really want to see it happen because we think it's really important. So every lesson has to have some kind of element that we've identified as being key for helping students become more literate. We work on vocabulary, on oracy, and on writing. The other thing that I would say is also important is that we make a lot of extra time for those who are weaker in literacy in English when they join us. Up to 12 hours a week in English and literacy for our Year 7 and Year 8 students. 5 hours a week for every student in the school in English, regardless of their ability. And we link our literacy program to English. We say the judgment of that is going to be how well students do in English, not how their reading age goes up or if they get a better spelling age. You can't turn up to university with a reading age and a spelling age. You have to turn up with some qualification in English. You can't be a teacher unless you have an English GCSE. And it's really important that we link those things together. Previously, when we didn't link them together, in St Albans, and I know it won't necessarily be the case in other places, it drove lots of peculiar behaviour about practicing and rehearsing for reading age and spelling age tests, and that's not what it's got to be about. That has a cost in terms of the curriculum that we can offer. Like Wendy, we don't offer MFL to students who still need to learn English. We have a reduced humanities offer as well in Year 7 and Year 8. But students graduate that program. So it's not a case of getting a child who comes into us with a low literacy level on start and saying, right, you're going to sit there all the way through Year 7 and Year 8. If we believe that the quicker you learn English, the quicker you can graduate that program, as soon as students have caught up to where they need to be, they move off to do MFL and those things. But at the start, there is a much reduced curriculum. And the time we make for English and maths means that we don't spend as much time as other settings on arts and drama. And that's the choice that we've made around those things. It costs more financially too. At the root of all of these things, there's a financial cost. So we have more staff in those areas. We have a longer school day to do that. So those things cost. And the last thing I'd say is that we invest our time and our money heavily in community relations. As Wendy was saying, it's so important to engage the parents around this work. Our demographic is different to the one that Wendy described. But our demographic is hugely aspirational for their children. Hugely aspirational. They want the very, very best for their children, as all parents, almost without exception, almost always do. The things that we do to engage those communities, which the Yemeni diaspora in Birmingham is one of the oldest diasporas into this city, has been in the city for over 100 years, but is an isolated community. The Somali diaspora, a much newer set of arrivals, but also isolated in the community. We employ, and you'll have the opportunity to meet one of our community liaison workers, NASA, in a workshop later. We employ community liaison workers. They act as the bridge between the school and the community. But I say to my staff, there's no point building the bridge if you're not going to walk across it. There's no point saying, NASA, Abdul, you sort out the community and we'll sit in our school and wait to see if that does any good. You have, as the senior leader, as a teacher, to walk across the bridge and go into the community. Because you might think I work for ARC, or you might think I work for St Albans Academy, or you might think I work for the Church of England. I work for that community. And that's absolutely fundamental. So we walk into the community, and I visit every parent in their house of Year 6 children coming into Year 7. That's a cost in time. So in the summer holidays, sometimes, cool. I'll tell you a story in the last 5 minutes. In the summer holidays, sometimes I look at the list of appointments and think to myself, I don't really want to do this. It's a lot of appointments. The sun is shining. I'm quite tired, and my partner and my children often advise me not to do it as well and say stay. But I go, and I go because I want to show our parents and our children the respect I think they deserve. They've made an important choice when they send their children to me. That is a privilege, as Tim mentioned. And I have always, without fail, been greeted in the most amazing way. An example. I went to a house in Balsall Heath. When I got there, the house was in, as many council houses are in Birmingham, a poor state of repair. When I went through the front door, everybody was waiting for me. So the girl I was going to teach for the next 5 years, that girl's sisters, that girl's parents, that girl's grandparents, everybody waiting for me. And this was not uncommon. And throughout the meeting, there was a leak coming through the ceiling. Now, I know the layout of the houses because my mother-in-law lives in a house that's similar. It's a very small 2-bedroom house. There's a leak coming through the ceiling. And I was thinking to myself, this is a difficult conversation to have. That girl's family, grandparents, sisters, absolutely committed to what I was saying to them about the importance of literacy and about the importance of going to university, absolutely committed to that journey that was going to be laid out in front of them. And I thought to myself afterwards, you know, sometimes I don't want to go on these meetings. And you walk out as a teacher, forget being a principal, you walk out as a teacher and you think to yourself, what we do is really worthwhile. What we do in these communities with these young people and their families is hugely transformative. Because if we send that child to university, then her sisters more likely will go to university. And then let's be really frank about it. Her parents and her grandparents won't have to live in overcrowded housing that leaks. So the cost of the time and the cost of the hard work, the cost of the community liaison work that NASA and Abdul and Ali do for me is offset by a huge benefit. There's a personal benefit to me in that it lifts me up and inspires me to work harder. But there's also, when we come down to it, the benefit that our students get. Those Year 11 students I talked about who came with such low levels of attainment on entry, 83% of them got a C or above in English at the end of their time, and just under 50% of them made 5 levels of progress. 5 levels of progress in their time with us. So we work really, really hard on that. We don't know all the answers, and the choices and costs that I've outlined for you to make, but if you ever want to come to see St Albans, you are always more than welcome. And if you have more questions, I'll happily answer them. Have I got time now? Probably not. I've got a workshop. I'll happily answer them then. And also, but I would direct you to NASA's workshop as well. He's sitting in the middle up there, who can also help with that. Thank you.
BEP Meet Events, bringing school leaders across Birmingham together to share and learn from and with each other.